Hey everybody, Ryan Graves. This is Soul Trek's Nowhere Near Death. Today we've got Thom Hiatt, high school buddy, now lives in San Diego. Tom's got an interesting story in his background, and I kind of want to find out how that came to be. So everybody stay tuned. Thom Hiatt, was that your dad that was vice principal?
Common question, great question. No, actually, so yeah, you and I know each other from high school, and
Right.
the vice principal while we were there was Bob Hyatt, and he was not a relative. Good friend, very good friend, but not a relative.
Okay. I think maybe you told me that before, but during the times that I was off and on again in the hospital, I actually just got out yesterday, um, stinking ammonia buildups. But so Tom and I were kind of more acquaintances back in high school. I was a year ahead, but closer in age to the class before me. So anyway, it's great to talk to you, man.
Likewise, thanks for
I
having me.
Oh, absolutely. So, do you do financial planning, or do you just do like Tom's actually one of the rare ones that kind of got away and moved to Southern California, actually, San Diego. Um, so how long have you been there?
So after you and I departed high school, I took off and enjoyed a few different universities. I first went to Northwest Missouri State for a year, enjoyed that, and then at the time I had a pretty successful mobile disc jockey company, and that business brought me back to Kansas City because I was always in Kansas City working, and I just thought I've got to just come back because this commute's no good. And so I had a sophomore year in Kansas City, and then my junior and senior number 2 years were all at the University of Missouri, and left there
Okay.
in '98 when packed up all my stuff and drove to San Diego. So what's that
Okay.
been? That's 26 years this year.
Wow. See, I left, but I was back a couple of times. So I spent a lot of time in different places. Excuse me, mostly Tahoe and Phoenix. But
Beautiful.
yeah, yeah, living in Tahoe is kind of the dream. So it's gotten so expensive up there. But so
I always wondered why more people didn't leave their hometown, or for us, why more people didn't leave Kansas City or, just Missouri in general. Not that it's bad, but I've just my whole life wondered why so many people tend to stay put wherever they grew up.
you and
Just a
yeah,
thought.
yeah, and I've wondered the same thing too, especially when, you can get on an airplane or it's not really that big of a deal. And if you're living and you've got your own family, which by the way, how is yours?
They're great. We're
Okay,
great.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have your own family, you see each other on holidays and things like that. But really beyond that, and then so you could fly in, things like that. It's not the end of the world.
When I first moved, I would tell people it's no different than moving across town. I mean, you change your phone number. Well, at the time, you might
Right.
change your phone number. You might change, your cable connection. You change your water bill to a different address. You know what I mean? You change those basic things, and those changes are going
Right.
to happen regardless of where you go. The only difference happens to be that, in my case, it was almost 2,000 miles. And
Right.
for other people, it might be, one, two, three, 400 miles, but it wasn't that difficult. And I wish more people would consider, just kind of venturing out a little bit.
Yeah, I look at my whole family, and I'm one of two boys. My brother I haven't spoken to in a long time for
Hmm.
his own reasons, I guess. But none of them, and I've got a lot, you know, 8 sisters and a brother, and through
Wow.
different marriages and different this, that, and so, kind of a concoction there, but they all stayed.
Yeah,
So,
Probably that's the norm. That's the default. And, I think we stay where we're most comfortable, areas that we know. We want to be close to family in most cases, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, you're right. People can be so mobile these days, and it's not too expensive to fly somewhere for a visit and whatnot. So, but
Well,
yeah, every family is different.
I've got a buddy that lives in Blue Springs, and he's doing more things, closer to north of the river. And I asked him, so why don't you just move up north? Or because I grew up in Blue Springs. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything, really.
Yeah.
So
Our country is so beautiful, and there's so much to
exactly.
experience, so much to see. I don't want to say so much to do. I mean, there's obviously a lot to do, but there's a lot to do everywhere. So there's just so much that's out there. And I guess what I'm getting at is it would be exciting for me to know that more people ventured out to experience more of at least what our country has to offer, if not more of the world.
Right.
Certainly to go and, you know, uh, just get out there. So I don't know, that's what I did. So we drove out here and uh just got an apartment, set up shop, and that was a long time ago. And in hindsight, I'm thrilled that I came out here to Southern California. I do occasionally miss things back home. As we all get older, I start to miss
Yeah.
family a little bit more. You start to reminisce about maybe, I don't want to say the weather. I mean, the weather was always a challenge,
Ugh, it
especially
is a
in
challenge,
Kansas
trust
City.
me.
But you miss that. Sometimes you miss the seasons. But I think especially as the holidays roll around, you kind of miss being a little closer to your family.
Yeah, to some degree, yeah. The weather up here drives me insane. That was my first sober winter in Kansas City, probably in 30, somewhere around 33, 34
Uh-huh.
years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, and I was like, is it always, well, that alone, would make you want to drink. But
Well,
yeah, I was like, this is amazing. There has been like literally 2 months where you cannot do anything outside.
yeah, it's hard. You had originally asked if I was a financial planner, I think is what you asked,
Correct.
and the answer is no. I'm not a financial planner, and I
Okay.
have I have no formal education or training in that. It just happens to be a passion of mine as I've grown up and become a parent and an adult, and so I do like I wouldn't call it financial planning so much as I appreciate financial literacy, especially for younger people.
Right.
So but no, my education is in advertising and marketing, and so that's what I studied in school, and that's what I have practiced for the last 25 years professionally. But my passion as of late is I find myself frequently I'm like that old guy. That old guy just happens to say something to a stranger, but sometimes I'll run into a teenager and we'll just I'll start talking about, hey, are you saving your money for when you're older? And we just sort of strike up a little bit of a conversation, and I love it. I love talking to people about living below their means and saving up for when they're older.
Well, that's good. Do you like hold workshops or anything for kids, or do you have
I
anything
don't,
like
I
that set
don't,
up?
I don't, and I absolutely would. It's one of those things where I think to have a workshop, you have to have, or you should have some more formal training, which I don't. I just know what I know. I know from my own experience, but I don't have any certificates in that area. And if I did, I absolutely would have workshops or teach classes or something like that, just informally. We
I
did,
mean,
a few years ago when one of my kids was in grade school. The principal at the time allowed me to kind of put together a club where we had some fifth and sixth and seventh graders come in once a week, and we would kind of talk about different aspects of money. And what they actually did was they started their own little fake business. And so during the course of the semester, they would run their little fake business and learn about their fake money and whatnot. And it was pretty cool. We
that
did
is
that a
cool. Do you
couple of
remember
years in a row.
Exchange City?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Exchange City was great. And they
Yeah.
have something really similar here in San Diego. It's called Biz Town, and that's put on by an organization, I believe Junior Achievement does that. But yeah,
Gosh,
Exchange
they
City,
they should still have that type of thing around.
you're right. They should, and I know they do here. They do here in San Diego, and I'm sure other cities. But it's just one of those things where it takes a lot of funding to keep them going. And maybe that's non-existent in Kansas City anymore. I don't know. I don't know.
Not that I know of. Yeah, I don't think so.
But the
I don't.
thing that gets me, and I guess, the reason I'm so passionate about it is, and this is, I realize that your audience is varied. There's a lot of different folks out there who, have lots of different experiences. So I don't mean to say anything that might be, offensive to someone. That certainly is
Oh,
not
no.
my intention. I understand that everyone has, great successes in life and also many struggles. And so just something that I've recognized over my years is that, certainly money tends to cause a lot of folks a lot of problems. And,
Yes.
especially with regards to marriages, it's kind of the number one reason that a lot of relationships get fractured is because of discussions about money. And I think that people when they're younger, they're missing out on that education and missing out on that literacy. So they grow up kind of not really knowing how to manage their money. And I'm not talking about it, that it's important to be some multimillionaire, but just basic, money management, basic
Yeah.
understanding of what credit cards do, basic understanding of what happens when you don't make a payment, basic understanding of, you know,
Right.
not buying every last little thing that you see on a shelf that you want. A lot of our society doesn't understand that. And so I don't know. I just look for a future where more people are a little more literate about their money so they're less stressed out. They don't have to necessarily work, multiple jobs to survive. Their marriages aren't necessarily so stressed because of funds, those kinds of things. That's what I'm passionate about.
And it almost seems rare too that you see teenagers working,
Yeah, anymore. You're right.
you know. Um, I mean, I remember which I started sweeping the garage, my dad's shop. He had Graves Equipment Company and all that stuff. But I started sweeping in there, and then when old Windows 3.1 came out, I started doing a spreadsheet for their actual snail mail list and things like that. But now I look around and my son, I use a Go Henry card for child support
Hmm.
so that he can, because he's 16 and and it comes back, he's gone run through money, in a matter of 2 or 3 days, and it's all food. It's all fast food. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got no concept of it. And then it'll be like $35, he'll have $15 left, and I'll have to tell him, you still have $15 left from the last time. And I'm gonna buy something rather than eating something, or buy something to make sandwiches with at least. But they don't teach any of that. I remember sitting in school and we had to practice writing checks. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
things have changed, and I want to throw out a couple of just imaginary numbers, and nobody hold me to it, but just the theory is there, okay? So, and I actually just I've heard this 100 times, but I saw it on social media a couple of days ago. So Susie Orman, she's a great financial whiz that's out there. You can look her up, Suzeorman. Well, anyway, she just had a quick little clip on social media. And again, these numbers are by no means perfect, but hear the idea. A 25-year-old who, working 25-year-old takes $100 a month and invests that in their retirement. And I'm not going to, specify an account or whatever, but just a decent, index fund account, $100 a month starting at age 25. She says that when that person hits 65 years old, their small monthly investment would be $1 million. Okay. So again, don't pay attention to the math. This is coming from her.
right. Okay.
That same person who, instead of starting at 25 years old, let's just say they go, I'm enjoying my life. I want to spend all the money that I make. And so let's say they wait until they're 35 years old. So instead of 25, they waited till they're 35. And now they put $100 a month in. That same person, starting at 35 years old, once they hit 65, that fund now is only worth $300,000. Okay.
That's a
So
big difference.
a difference of $700,000 for that person at their
Over 12.
retirement.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason I point that out, and you mentioned like your son would buy snacks and food and whatnot. My brother he witnesses there's this teenage girl in the neighborhood. He witnesses her buying things left and right. And he sees her buy something like, part of a Halloween outfit. He commented once. And he said, that $40 piece that you added to your Halloween costume, if
Mhm.
you'd properly saved that, would be worth, X number of giant amount of dollars when you're older. And that's just something that a lot of people don't quite understand. I want to buy this thing right now. I want to buy this bag of chips right now. I want to buy this movie ticket right now. I want to buy this, extra piece of extra accessory to go in my Halloween costume right now. And it's those little tiny bits now that we're not putting away properly so that later in life we're well taken care of. So, anyhow, we're kind of getting long on that, but you get it.
No, it's okay.
You get it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's nice to hear you're passionate about that. And thumbs up to you too. That's something that needs to be done. That's something that the youth needs to talk. I mean, you've got TikTok videos and things like that, which I don't watch TikTok, but I see about them on other stuff that if I leave YouTube on, but inevitably I'll get somebody judging TikTok videos. And you got a kid that is in school full time and works like 2 days a week, and he's in the back of a Starbucks sitting on the floor crying, about working.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just, I don't know, to us, you didn't mow your yard for free. You didn't, or
Well, I mowed my yard.
I'm just saying you mowed your yard for free.
Yeah, right.
If
Yeah, yeah.
eventually, you took it over or whatever, then it would be part of things. But we were just taught a completely different set of ways things are. And, that's on parents. And I know that you had said something about social media. So what do you think are the dangers of social media?
Oh man. Oh man.
I know I've got a ton too. I mean, as you know, I'm a counselor and stuff like that. And a lot of the training I had to do for the youth counseling was based on
Yeah.
that. So
Well, so generally speaking, I think it's the best thing ever, and it's also the worst thing ever. Um, that's a thought that I had long ago with the iPads, and iPads coming into my home and iPads being a part of my children's lives. I would say to people, this is the best thing ever from a technological perspective. Like, it's the coolest thing that you could have something the size of a magazine and it would do what it could do. I thought
mhm.
that was amazing. But at the same time, it would cause so much grief and struggle, among our family with, anytime the kid got in trouble, we would take away the iPad, on and on and on. So with social media, my gut reaction is it is the coolest thing that people can reconnect.
Sure.
You and I, for example, reconnecting, or the
Right.
way that we might promote and attend, things like a class reunion, or how you might spread the word of a church event, or, just different things out there where it just really isn't possible to do some of the things today without social media, or at least as easily. But at the same time, the negatives I feel like outweigh the positives. The negatives of people constantly checking for some sort of an update, some sort of positive feedback on what they might have posted, constantly feeling like they have to post something that's impressive to their friends, their family, and to strangers that are out there, constantly wondering, am I good enough? Why didn't I get enough likes? Why don't I have enough comments? Why did the people say what they said? And it's bad enough for adults to think those things.
Right.
And when you mix teenagers and even children, God forbid, into
Children.
that
Yeah.
world, it's scary. When you've got kids who are teens and they're doing that, or they're thinking those same things. Why don't these people like my picture as much as I like it? Why don't I get as many likes as Sally or Sarah? And that's really bad. I think that really starts to affect people's self-esteem, and it just goes downhill from there. But so
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's okay, but I would like to see a whole lot more regulation when it comes to youth being involved with social media.
And that's going to require the parents. So,
Totally, 100%.
and right. So, do you subscribe, or what did you think, or have you thought about a kid that grows up in that world? Because I'm kind of watching my sister's got kids that are younger than mine, and they really grew up in the middle of it and not seeing people face to face and not actually dealing. There's something to be said for a child growing too, based on literally getting face to face contact time with their parents.
Yeah, you're right.
So everything has become virtual. That's the world they live in. I've got, I've got a niece that won't even like go to a counter at a gas station or go pick up a pizza, go inside, things like
Yes.
that, because it's almost like that's too real. I'm like, what are you gonna do when you get older? You're gonna have to deal with people at some point.
I'm laughing because my daughter had the exact same experience with her friend, and this was a few years ago, but she and a friend were at a, just little ice cream shop, and the friend dropped her spoon on the floor, and she go, "Oh gosh, I need to get a new spoon." And my daughter says, "Just go to the counter and get one." And the friend says, "No, I don't want to go talk to them."
Right.
It was all because they don't know how to talk to
Exactly.
don't know how to talk to strangers. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is they escape in there if there's something wrong. So let's say it takes a year and you're like, hey, Johnny's been spending a lot of time on his iPad or his phone or whatever on social media and doing this and that and gaming and everything. Well, by the time, and let's say there's something wrong with Johnny, which there's a reason. And I've been saying this for 6 months. There's a reason that there's the youth mental illness is by leaps and bounds higher than it ever has been.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say maybe 10 years ago, one of my oldest kids was just getting to the age of, having a phone. And at the time, the social media wasn't even so much of an issue as just text messaging. Okay. And she would always ask, why can't I have social media? Why can't I be texting, so and so? And I would say, listen, if you want to communicate with your friend, just call them. I know it sounds old fashioned, but just call them on the phone. You guys will have so much more fun just talking, just like back in the day, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, teenagers talking on the phone. Okay. And so I just want to share with you the result of that. We wouldn't really allow we certainly didn't allow the social media, and the text messaging we would limit. And so she would start to pick up the phone and actually call the friend. And I would sit in an adjacent room, just doing my work, and I would hear her on the phone for hours laughing and carrying on. And it would just make me smile, make my heart smile, because here she was actually properly communicating with another human being.
Right.
And I would tell her, and even some of her friends, I would say, listen, here's at least my thought on this. I'm no professional, but here's my thought. When all you do is text message, okay, if all you ever do is text message with your friends, you certainly might be friends with them and you certainly have a relationship with them, okay? But the relationship that you're developing with that person or with those people has very shallow roots. Your communications are very limited. They're very short.
Very limited.
They're very quick comments.
That's why we
One
have
word, two
inflection in
words.
our voices, and that's
so
why we react to the way a person sounds, or
Right. And if you're developing a relationship with a friend that's based entirely on short messages, the way I would describe it is the roots of the tree of your relationship, those roots are very, very shallow in the ground. They're very shallow roots of a relationship. And so when something happens, and it inevitably will, that there's a fight, a misunderstanding, an argument, and the two of you are upset with each other, if all you're doing is text messaging and you have shallow roots in your relationship, someone's going to say something that's very, harsh or snappy. And next thing you know, in a matter of 3 seconds, you both essentially tell each other buzz off, and our friendship is over because the tree fell down, it had short roots, right?
Right.
But if you're talking, and as you just said, if you can hear each other's tone and emotions and really the thoughts and the sounds of their words, the roots of your tree are going to get a lot deeper. And so when you have a problem, you're going to have an easier job of working things out, and your friendship is going to last. And so, fast forward 10 years from only being able to talk on the phone and have very rare text messages. I hope that I would say that that particular child of mine has the ability to develop much stronger friendships and relationships in her life. So that I do fear that our society has only the ability now to develop relationships with shallow roots, and that's a very scary thing.
So does your family belong to a church? Just out of curiosity.
We do, yeah. We're
Okay,
actually very, very involved.
good.
I'm a reader at my church, so at least once a month, you'd see me up at the AMBO reading the readings during mass. We're Catholic, so during mass, I'll be doing that. And my wife, she's a very frequent pianist at the church, so she's playing the music. I might be lecturing. My kids aren't as involved as maybe I would want them to be, but maybe those roots are there for their future. They certainly attend with us, but I'm just saying that from a involvement and participation level, let's just say they're still kids, and so maybe when they're teens, college age, young adults, they'll be more apt to participate in their own church experience.
Right. So what I was going to ask you is, what would your answer be to, you mentioned you were interested in the GPTs.
Oh, yeah.
What would your answer be to your solution for making sure that your kids don't use it to finish their homework?
Well, so
That to me is like one of the biggest problems right there.
yeah, so we had a conversation at our house just a couple of days ago, and this is what happened. So with regards to Chat GPT and Google Gemini and X's Grok and all of those, when Chat GPT first came out, at least to the public in the fall of, I think it was 2002, I read all the articles and I jumped on it as soon as I could. And I have to tell you, it was beyond mind blowing. I mean, for a kid who grew up excited to get his first computer and, played Pac-Man all day long and all those different Atari 2600 games and whatnot. I did my fair share of like computer basic programming as a kid. I've loved technology my whole life. And so when this thing came out, mind blowing. I thought this is something that's its own chapter, not chapter, but our future, our new way of doing things. I just couldn't believe it. So I've watched it kind of grow since then. And of course, early on, there was this big concern about, okay, well, kids are going to use ChatGPT and all the others to write their essays. And then you would see the teachers and professors reacting to that. Okay, how are we going to catch the kids doing that? So it is a legitimate concern, and it's only getting better to the point where it's far less detectable now than ever before.
Right.
So what I told my kids just literally a couple of days ago is I said, listen, I don't have any problem with it. I have no problem with you using ChatGPT or Google Gemini or any of those. I don't care if you use it to help yourself start writing a story or to, start working on a database of information or, plan a vacation. I think it's a great, great tool. I said, but if you use that to do your work, if you use it to replace yourself in education, you're only hurting yourself. You're
Right.
going to, at some point, be tested on whether or not you know the information that you were supposed to be learning in class. And you're either going to pass or you're going to fail. And if you use that as a replacement of your education or your replacement to be for your ability to write or compose an essay, you're going to fail. So use it as a tool, have fun with it, use it to inspire yourself with different projects, but don't replace your education with it. And if you do that, then great. It's no different than any other amazing tool that's out there. But if anybody that's using ChatGPT to, replace their own learning to write and properly form sentences and paragraphs and stories, they're not doing themselves any favor, and it's going to bite them bad long term.
Okay. That's a pretty good answer. Yeah. It sounds like though, I mean, you've put restraint on from an early age though.
Well,
So,
I think it's communication. It's talking to the kids about, these things that are out there and trying to at least, you know, be
but at the
smart
same
about it.
time, I mean, we're gonna have to, what dad says is, I mean, yes, there's communication, but yeah, we're gonna
Listen,
talk about this. We're gonna, right.
if my kid is in high school and uses it and fails because they actually didn't learn information, at least they know that I told them, not to do that. And
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have that conversation over and over and over. But the fact of the matter is this: I personally use those tools multiple times a day right now. And so, and they're only going to get better. And so, if I use it and I think they're great for so many different things, why would I not want my own kids to have the ability to use
True.
those same tools to help them? I mean, look, I can in 5 seconds, make a list of people's names and phone numbers and email addresses in a way that might have taken me an hour, just a year ago or a month
Right.
ago, right? So why would I not want to save myself that time? And why would I not want my kid to know how to do the exact same thing? So for those things, I want them to be able to understand it's a tool, use the tool properly, and again, just not use it to replace their own, development, their own education.
Right. Right. Because even, and especially when you get to college and things like that, or if have any advanced lit or writing class or anything else, you're going to have to cite sources and, GPT doesn't always do that.
A lot of us have been in professional jobs where you've had a coworker who that coworker just skirts by. They're lazy. They don't do the work. And I'm a fan of delegation, but let's just say someone that delegates constantly because they don't want to do the work, or they're not willing to do the work, or they don't know how to do the work. We've all had that coworker, and it frustrates us. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the
No.
person at the office who everyone else thinks is lazy and constantly pushes the work off on other people. So learn how to do the work and do the work. And at the same time, when the tools come around that make our life easier, you can use them, right? But don't be that guy.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Your trip called
Yeah.
Finding Myself.
Yeah.
Tom found several different Thomas Hyatts and drove around the country and did you end up meeting all of them that you wanted to?
No, 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 no.
Oh, eight. Okay, so you ended up meeting eight.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, was the trip a reason for travel or was travel a reason for the trip?
It's a great question. I would probably lean more towards the second. I'd love to give just a quick second of background on
Sure.
on this whole thing.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of my aunts, her name's Christine. She's actually the one who encouraged me to go to MU back in the day. She says to me one time, she goes, "When are you going to go to a real school?" At the time, I was at community college, right? And she says, "When are you going to go to a real school?" And I was at first a little offended by that, but she was the one who encouraged going there. So I give her credit for that. And she also, at a different time in life, um, I had already moved to Southern California, but she had encouraged me to read this book called Blue Highways, and she knew about the book because its author was also from Missouri, where she is, and so she passed it along to me, or at least told me about it, and I got a copy from somewhere, probably the library. But Blue Highways is by an author named William Least Heat Moon, and
I think
that's
you texted me that the other
yeah.
day. Yeah.
And I read the book, couldn't put it down. It was really interesting, very unique book. But just the quick synopsis is that this guy who, at the time, he was a professor at the University of Missouri. He, if I recall, he had lost his job, and his wife asked him for a divorce
Right.
all on the same day. And so he retrofitted his van and took off on a road trip, which ultimately he would drive only on the highways that were the color blue in his printed atlas. So he's looking at the pages. He wanted to be on only the blue highways, which were the smaller state roads. His intention was to completely stay off of the interstates, which he said, and I would agree, are very boring. And so he drove around on the blue highways, thus the title of the book. And in his book is about all of the people that he meets along the way. And so it's sort of like it's a story of the fabric of America, but at the same time, it was him sort of, diving a little bit deeper into himself after, the tragedies he'd been through of losing his job and essentially his wife. So I read the book, and I remember at the time I thought, oh my gosh, how amazing would it be to take a trip like that? When would I ever be able to do that? And because I love a good road trip. And interestingly, right around the same exact time that I was reading that book, there was a website at the time. What was it called? What was it called? I'm losing it right now. But it was sort of like an online directory, sort of like a white pages. And just one day, I very egotistically looked up my own name, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's
I don't know if I would call
79.
that egotistical,
Well,
just
the curiosity. Yeah, yeah,
curiosity.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So 79 Thomas Hyatt's. And oh my goodness, I couldn't even believe it. And I just, obviously, because of having just read that book, in my mind, I thought to myself, what on earth would it be like to drive around and meet these guys, right? So in a matter of, um, no, I guess it was a couple of years. I just thought I'm never going to have a chance to do this because I'm working. I had a corporate job at the time. How do you go to your boss, and say, hey, listen, I need to take a month or two off because I want to take a road trip. I mean, you'd be fired uh, pretty quickly. At least that's what I thought. So it just so happened that in 2002, I had been given an opportunity and was going to be in between jobs before going to, this next opportunity. And so I said to that new boss at the time, I said, listen, I can't wait to be working with you, but listen, there's this thing that I really want to do that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And he says, well, what is it? I said, well, I kind of just want to drive around the country and meet these other guys named Thomas Hyatt. And he says to me, oh my goodness, that's great. Not only yes, but he says, I want to give you a car to do that in. So this was a car company that I was going to go work for. And so
Really?
yeah, it was if you remember the company Saturn. So Saturn, it was the local general manager, and so he took one of his nicest wagons off the lot. It was, their high-end car at the time. And we put a decal on the side with the logo and what I mean, it was not for marketing purposes whatsoever, but because he was letting me drive his car for free, I allowed having the logo on there, of course. It's the least I could do. And so he lets me borrow this Saturn wagon, which was great, loved it. And I used that car to drive around the country to meet these guys. And so what happened was, just let me back up just one second, is when I knew that I was going to take the trip, I put together kind of a mailer, and it was a letter describing, the background, why I wanted to take this trip. And there was a response card, kind of a postcard. Send this back to me if you'd be interested in possibly meeting up. So I sent this letter packet with the card to all 79 of the guys all over the country. And I gave it a couple of weeks. I don't remember if I have a deadline on there or not, but I got back 13 responses telling me, sure, that'd be great. Stop on by. And I took all 13 of those and I put push pins in a big map that I had. I put them all, where these guys were. And out of the 13, I could make kind of a really big circle with 11 of them. They kind of were spread out around the country if you can imagine, kind of an oval going around the United States. There were two that just were really kind of out of the way, which is humorous to say, but they were out of the way and were not part of that circle. And so I set off, and the first one happened to be, in Southern California, and it was very convenient. And, then it would be sort of up the coast. And then I, went from Washington eastward over to the Midwest and continued on over to Indianapolis. I mean, we could go through talking about each one of the guys, and that would be a very long and interesting story. But I will say, when I was in Indianapolis meeting the Thomas Hiatt there, actually he was a very well-to-do guy and had even a guest home and invited me to stay in his guest home. And at that time, this was October of 2002. At that time, you might recall there was a couple of people on the East Coast that they were calling the DC Sniper. And the sniper
Yeah, I
had
remember that.
been setting up shop and unfortunately shooting people, mostly at gas stations. And they couldn't find them. The police all over the place were, hunting and hunting, looking for these guys, and just could not put their finger on them. And I had to decide, while I was in Indianapolis, do I keep heading eastwards toward, I think I had an appointment in New York, New York City, and I didn't want to get myself involved in that area. I had another gentleman down, I think he was in South Carolina, and then there was another one somewhere over there, I forget, but there were three Thomases on the East Coast, and I had to make a decision that, as much as I was stopping for gas constantly on a road trip like that, I just didn't want to subject myself to possibly being a target of the DC Sniper. So I skipped the three guys on the East Coast, and it wound up being a very, very good trip to meet eight of them, which I still thought was fabulous. And that entire trip took 26 days. It was approximately 10,000 miles. And, just unbelievable, the memories that I've got from it. I shot a lot of video. I audio recorded every interview that I had with each one of them. Took a lot of notes at the time. My wife, at the time, she was my fiance, but she put together a blog that I could go online and type out sort of a journal every single day. And so we've still got all that. And eventually, I think I might like to try to put together a story, about this whole quote unquote finding myself trip, which, like I said, it was great to do. It was a great experience. Glad that I did it. Love telling the story. And there's so much more I could probably tell you about it. But that's what happened.
So what was the coolest geographical area that you thought?
I love the northwest part of the country. I remember meeting with Thomas Hiatt, who he has since passed away. He was an older gentleman when I met him, and so obviously many years have passed now. But we met on the coast. It was just gorgeous in the area that we were there. This is on coastal Washington. I remember, let's see, it was Ferndale, Washington, if anybody wanted to look that up. But that was beautiful. I just loved the coastal part of northwestern United States. And then also, for some reason in my mind, I was fond of driving through the, what would you call it? Like the Idaho,
Mhm.
Montana kind of area, like this, just very wide open, beautiful space.
Right.
So those two would be probably my favorite.
Yeah, I'll be in Colorado, then Utah, then I'm actually going up to Washington also, and then going PCH all the way down. So
There's just something about being out on the road, which I know that you enjoy and are looking forward to with the trip that you're going to be taking. And I also just love talking to strangers. It's one of my favorite things I've always enjoyed doing is talking to strangers. There's nothing better. Sometimes you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. And in the case of Blue Highways, that author, he would go to a small city, and he'd go into the cafe, and he'd be sitting there having a burger or whatever it might be, and he would chat with the locals, and he would literally say to them, "Hey, where should I go next?" And they would say, "Oh gosh, you just got to go to, XYZ town down the road." And that's what he would do. That's how he kind of got around, was chatting with the locals and taking their advice, their prompting on where he should go next.
yeah, and they're really interested when they find out what you're doing, something like that, some sort of a road trip and or just living somewhere for a while to check it out. When I lived in Tahoe, I was actually working one New Year's Eve, or I'm sorry, 4th of July, and a guy asked me, before the fireworks started because I worked at a restaurant on Lake Tahoe and they have a huge display out over the lake. And he asked me, what brought you here? And I just told him, I said, well, I came out west and just driving around, and then I ended up going from Vegas to here because I saw a movie the night before that had Tahoe in it and it looked beautiful. And but yeah, and then they start telling you everything about what they've done and everything else. But he stopped. He was probably he was probably about my age now, but he goes, yeah, he goes, you're doing it right. You do it then, and then you start to do it because you don't want to wait until you're, 65, 70 years old to do stuff like that
It's hard.
when you
It's
no
hard.
longer feel like it anymore.
Well, and once maybe you've got the job, traditional job where you're going to
Right.
the office or you're going to the factory or what have you, and you can't quite get away from that. Or maybe you've got children and the children are in school and you can't quite just up and leave. And yeah, it's important to get out and do some of those things earlier before the family, before the jobs, and just get out there and enjoy it, because afterwards it just becomes a lot more difficult to take off, and you you really do have to wait until the kids have grown up and
Right.
all those things. So yeah, he was right to tell you that.
Yeah. So, the way I look at it right now, obviously, having gone through what I've been through over the last going on 2.5 years, has been rough. And I've been kind of held down and waiting. And, I've been talking about doing this for over a year, and I've known that it's what is supposed to happen, but, God's time. So, but, that's coming soon. But I'm going to do a lot more of a geographic kind of feel and stuff like that, and do individual videos of different areas and things like that, and then do the podcast while I'm on the road, and things like that. So, and
So when
then
you say geographic, Ryan, you're talking about like showing off a lot of land features,
right.
showing off the area where you're at, as opposed to necessarily the people that you meet. That's what you're saying. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed to the people that I meet. I'm just saying that, a lot of it's going to be kind of a video photo deal, and hopefully by the end of the year or so I'll be able to even put a calendar together with a Bible verse on each page with a picture of where, I've got a lot of ideas about what to do with the things I get from this trip. Plus, I've already got a couple of places to be, to help out. So
That's great.
yeah, and
That's a
it's
great
kind of,
idea with the calendar.
yeah. Yeah, so and then obviously promote the ministry with Soul Trek. So yeah, I've actually got the Life 88 is a Christian radio station up here, and they're supposed to be calling me here this afternoon to talk about having me on their podcast.
Well, that's great. And maybe that would be a regular thing. I could even imagine they might want to have you on regularly as you're traveling.
I'm excited, and I'm excited to share what I come across and what I see. I'm going to the Garden of the Gods first, Colorado, outside of Colorado Springs, and got a couple of people to see there, and then yeah, going up to Utah.
I'm curious, what would you say is your big well, not motivation, but your big goal in taking this trip?
Um, I'm gonna do some preaching. I'm trying to get in position to do some public speaking too, kind of gospel related, but I think that, as far as the mental things go with kids especially, I'm of the opinion that they need to fix their heads to some degree to be receptive of the other too, to have, to be a fully formed person of God like they need to be. um, so I don't know if that makes any sense. So I'll be calling ahead and scheduling and seeing if, if there's high schools to talk to or colleges even, and just to kind of show the comparison, because I think that you have to deal with what's on the surface in order to get through the nut,
Yeah, especially in this world where things are so superficial, we need to make sure that the kids can dive a little deeper.
Right. Right. But they can't go in there with they've got to shed some of those preconceived things. And that's one of the things that I've known as I've studied and, still continue to. I'm still working on a degree in divinity. Um, is that so many people, when they attack the Christian church and everything, they're not even saying things that are in the Bible. They're not even, that's completely misconstrued. And in my opinion, you should know it if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So,
I think you've done an amazing job of your development, your education, the certificates that you've received, just all the feathers that you've put in your cap over the past few years. It's very admirable.
oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been long and, for a long time I kept thinking I just need a job. I just need a job to get me past this and everything. And that just apparently wasn't in the cards because I put out about 1,500 resumes. And so, yeah, it's time to just kind of put my arms up and go do what I'm supposed to be doing. And,
And so you're planning to leave Missouri at the end of July or
right.
when are you? Okay, good.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I'll be camping around and I'm going to stay at dispersed camping mostly. So, I mean,
And
I've
so
got
for someone that doesn't really know, what is that? What is a dispersed camping?
government land. A lot of times there's campsites, but there's nobody checking in. There's none of that. So they're actually free.
And no plumbing,
No plumbing. No.
no creature comforts.
No creature comforts.
It's
Hopefully
it's you and the
internet,
trees.
right? Me and the trees and my solar panels and my
My mom would call it roughing it. When you're roughing it, it grounds you. I mean, literally and figuratively, grounds you to earth. It grounds you to a lot of your own personal characteristics. You can think more clearly. There's just less distraction. It's great. People should try it.
yeah, absolutely. And obviously I've been camping a lot over this summer. So
What does your family? I'm curious. What does your family uh, uh, think about your trip, and how are they supporting your trip?
they're
And
they're worried. That's one of the things I'm trying to raise money for, which I've gotten nothing off of Facebook, and I've got a meeting with the church tomorrow, and then I've got the Life 88 thing going on to try to just raise some money because I've tried everything for part-time work, as long as it's remote, because even if I could do it from a hospital bed if I had to. But the last thing they did, geez, they did like 8 surgeries in a month and a half, and this wasn't very long ago. And so now I'm not in pain anymore at all.
mm,
And yeah, so the last thing that I've been kind of dealing with, which is something that I should be able to address, is ammonia. And the reason I bring that up with your question about the family, they're worried about that because you can get an ammonia buildup and you don't really know what you're doing. And
mm,
so that's part of the reason that I'm trying to get funds raised too, is because I'm planning on getting a dog. And the more time the dog spends around me, the more time they can detect it like a day or two in advance, which is long enough for me to raise one of my medications to make sure that it doesn't get that bad.
gotcha,
So
gotcha.
they're worried. They think I'm a little bit crazy, but I'm in good hands. So
You're in the best hands.
yeah.
Well, have you
So,
put together, I'm curious, have you put together kind of a budget of what you need for
yeah, I
how long you'll
mean,
be out?
living, and I'll still, I mean, I'll still be getting disability, but I've got I had a very tragic ordeal with the car I bought before the one I've got now. My father passed away, and I used most of the inheritance to pay because my other car, it passed away also. And I had inheritance money, and I used part of it on the car that I bought. Well, they put the wrong transmission fluid in it, and it was
Uh-oh.
yeah, it was CVT and not regular. And they put the wrong stuff in there. Well, it ruined the transmission. So I ended up paying $12,000 for a car that anyway, I ended up losing like $11,000 on it buying this new one because I just had to trade it in for nothing. So anyway, my point is that I've got, a car payment now too, and I have to send my kids money and things like that. So afterwards, there's not a lot left over until I monetize the podcast and YouTube and all of that stuff. So I'm just kind of, I'm looking at maybe $600-700 a month.
For trip expenses.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's no hotels. That's BLM land, gasoline, and food,
Right.
correct?
Yep. And
Yeah.
you can stay on the BLM land. You can stay, general rule is 14 days out of any given year. So,
Okay.
but, and
As a
there's,
as a continuous stay, right? Is that right? So
right,
14 days in a row, you could
right,
move on. Okay, okay, okay.
correct. But there is a ton of it in Colorado. There's a ton of it in California. I don't know. Have you been to like Lone Pine and stuff in California?
I've honestly never heard of it.
Okay. I hadn't either. And they kept saying the Alabama hills. And I used to live in Alabama because I stayed with my dad for a little while before he got really sick. And I'm looking at pictures of this because I just had some RVing show on. And I'm looking at pictures of this and I'm like, that is not Alabama. I know it isn't. I'm like, that looks like California.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, if you take the road up inland and then go up through like kind of close to the border on the California side, you go up through Big Bear and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I would like to kind of go there too. I mean, I really don't have a time frame. I mean, I truly and honestly am just giving myself over and just saying, okay, whatever needs to happen, we'll get this figured out. I need to get a dog and I need to, I can do it just on the disability, but I'm not supposed to eat that stuff, like bologna and hot dogs and stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
not the greatest thing for me. So
Well, I have faith it's all going to work out, and I
I do
think as
too.
long as you're faithful to your dream to do it, it's all gonna come to fruition for you in the short term. So yeah, I mean, I would encourage you also, this kind of goes full circle back to, you know, trying to encourage kids to actually use the phone and talk to one another. I would encourage you to actually just strike up a conversation with someone and just ask, you ask for a very specific kind of help and see what happens. There might be, folks out there that, you meet, you talk to, they hear what's going on. You show them your pictures, you show them your story, and they might want to help you out. I was on my trip and I remember sitting in the football stadium at there was a Thomas Hiatt who was a coach of a high school football team, and we're sitting in the stadium and I was talking to his wife about what I was doing and why I was doing it, and she you know said, "Oh, hey, here you go, here's some money, just buy yourself some gas." And that wasn't even from asking. I wasn't asking for anything, but I certainly appreciated it. But I mean, there's people who certainly would love to support your mission and your journey, but you've
Right.
got to you've got to you've got to be able to ask, so I encourage you.
And that's why I've been putting up, from time to time the stuff on Facebook. I put it on LinkedIn and put it on, the GoFundMe, or there's even an option on my website to do it through PayPal. So, but nothing. I mean, very little. But that was like a year and a half ago. And since then, I've managed to raise up maybe $110 total that I've used on camera equipment or, software and stuff like that. Because I've got to pay for the podcast platform so that they all stay up. I've got to pay hosting and all that jazz for my website and do all this stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of running on nothing. That's why I'm looking for help to get it kicked off. And I realized, I said a couple of times I was leaving and then I would get sick again. So apparently it wasn't time. So,
So
but
who's next on your podcast? So, somehow I I hope that you've enjoyed this, but and
sure.
I'm glad you had me. I hope it was worth your time. I'm curious who's next for you?
I was actually going to see if I could get my mom to do it. She's been there from, obviously from day one. She was there when I died and got brought back or came back.
Yeah. Well,
So
day one from your birth, even, Ryan.
I was normal crazy Ryan back then,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's pretty cool. That would be great. Who else?
I don't know yet for sure.
Who would you like to have? I mean, what kind of a person would you like to have?
I'm always curious about, I'd like to have a pastor or, a preacher that runs their own church, their own community thing. So, just kind of what they did to sort of prepare themselves for, every Sunday and how it is to, do the same service 3 times in a row.
So again, I just I want to encourage you to just ask, if there's a particular pastor or I mean literally a
Yeah, I'm meeting
specific
with
pastor.
them tomorrow,
Good.
actually.
I mean, you just
Yeah.
don't hesitate to straight up ask. You've done more in probably 2 years than most people will do their entire adult lives as far as, their training and education. It's quite admirable.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. And yeah, I'll keep going and hopefully, gets because I like doing the one-on-one counseling, but I try to do it, paid and things like that. And I just
Ryan, just keep at it. Keep
oh
at
yeah.
it and people will jump on your bandwagon, no problem.
Right. And that's one of the reasons for those. I'm gonna do a video every spot that I'm in. Like I said, I'm going to Garden of the Gods first, then maybe Pikes Peak. But they've also got like a cave dwelling thing and over in Garden of the Gods that looks pretty interesting. So, but yeah, and I might do some live casting from a couple of those areas and things like that. I mean, just kind of travel through me.
That's awesome.
So,
Well, I can't wait to see the fruit of your labor during this trip and
oh, absolutely.
can't wait to see the calendar also when that's all done.
Hey, and thank you so much, for connecting with me because it was you that invited me to the reunion and all that, and I really appreciated that because I was feeling like a really weird, I didn't know what to think. I was newly sober, I was newly born again, and all this stuff, and I was just sitting here in the basement, just going, "Hey, what do I do?" And then you said something about that, and I was like, "Well, that'll be cool."
Well, you're welcome. And of course, I wasn't aware of all those things that you were thinking and feeling, but I just wanted to reach out and make sure that each and every person that was a part of that time in our lives was, aware of the event and invited. And I'm so glad that you were there.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. All right, Tom, we got less than a minute. I want to thank you very much for coming on. And you're pretty interesting too.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan, and God bless you.
God bless you. All right, guys, that will do it for our podcast on the night. You can go to thesoultrek.com if you're in need of counseling or anything that we offer on there as a ministry. And if you want to give to the upcoming mission, it's like I said, it's www.thesoultrek.com. There's a give button at the top, and there's 2 different ways. So thanks, and everyone have a great day.